Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Carly Stevens. I'm the author of the Tanyuan Academy series, and this is English Nerd. So today I wanted to talk about reliable versus unreliable narrators. This is a pretty common idea in literary analysis or just even reading literature. Is the narrator somebody that you can trust or not? That's essentially the question. This question almost always comes up in first-person narrated stories, although it can be with third person. Basically, reliable and unreliable narrator, it's a spectrum, kind of like the trustworthiness of a person is a spectrum. Like, yes, you absolutely can trust what these people say, maybe not so much as you go further down that spectrum. So I wanted to show you some examples of what that can look like when you have an unreliable narrator and some shades that can take. So really famously, we have in The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe, the beginning tips us off right away that we have an unreliable narrator. Now, the reason you might not want your reader to trust what the narrator is saying in the story is to create a sort of ambiguity. So it works well for something like the thriller that we have in this short story, The Telltale Heart, that begins this way. True, nervous, very, very dreadfully nervous. I had been and am. But why will you say that I am mad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. And then he talks about how his hearing is particularly good because he can hear everything that's going on in heaven and sometimes things going on in hell. So there are a few red flags right away, big red flags that let us know off the bat, first paragraph, that this is an unreliable narrator. First of all, he's defending himself against the accusation that he's insane. And then he says something that's pretty insane, that he can hear everything going on in heaven and in hell. As the story goes on, we know that continues to be true, that he is unreliable because he, of course, murders the man with the glassy blue eye and chops up his body and hides him in the floorboards, even though he admits that the man had never actually done anything to wrong him. It was just the eye that struck him the wrong way, which is, of course, completely mad. He's psychotic. So that is a really classic example, and one of my favorite ways of making a character unreliable is that madness or the potential for madness. A couple other really good examples of that sort of unreliability are the Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Gilman Perkins. Yes, I should have double checked before doing this video, but anyway, so the Yellow Wallpaper is incredible. It's another first-person story. It's written in diary form, and it starts out and she seems fairly reliable, although we know she's getting rather sick, but more and more often she starts saying things that are clearly disconnected from reality, and she just goes more and more down the path of madness until she's utterly unreliable. So that one's really fun in a twisted sort of way, but it is, Halloween, so it's a twisted sort of time. Another classic example is The Turn of the Screw, where we have a narrator who generally seems to be a reliable one, but more and more often we start getting these hints that maybe she is not seeing things as they actually are. We can't really trust her until we get to the very, very end, which if you haven't read it, I won't give it away, but it's chilling in that the two options of what actually happened at the end are both horrible, and you can't tell if there's a ghost or if she has gone mad. So awesome unreliability there. Another common way that you can create an unreliable narrator is by having them just truly not understand, not because they're mad, but maybe they are in other ways mentally impaired. So you have something like Flowers for Algernon, where Charlie is very well-meaning and he intends to tell you the truth, but he's so mentally impaired that he is clearly not to be trusted. And we can tell early on with tons of clues, not only the spelling and grammar, if you look at it being that of a small child, but he'll say things like, oh yes, he's my best friend, and then he describes the person and he's actually this mean coworker who clearly doesn't care about him. And so we, the reader, can tell that we can't necessarily rely on him to be telling us the truth. Now, most of the time the narrators are reliable because they have to be, right? We have to trust what they're saying the majority of the time, unless you want that kind of ambiguity, which can work well in something like a mystery or a thriller or something psychological. But like I said, it is a spectrum. Sometimes you can trust the narrator in one area, but not in another. So you think about The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro, for instance. You have Mr. Stevens, the butler, no relation, who is meticulous in his factual recount of events. The words that were spoken, the things that were done and said, and he will constantly re-clarify himself as far as the events are concerned. But emotionally speaking, he never talks about emotions, and so even though he's describing events that clearly would have emotional consequences, he leaves that part out. So you can trust him until you get to emotions, and then suddenly he becomes more of an unreliable narrator, and the whole story is about his emotional connection with Miss Kenton and how that didn't work out. So it's an interesting dynamic there. So that is basically it. Reliable narrators are normally the way to go, but you can, with either madness or mental impairment or intentionally suppressing an aspect of oneself, become more unreliable over time as stories go on. Hopefully you don't become more unreliable over time. Okay, that is it for today. Make sure to like this video and subscribe for more English nerdy goodness. Make sure you ring the bell for notifications, and I will see you next Monday. Bye.